Alright guys, you guys are coming with me again down memory lane. Welcome to Opinion Spot. Day 6 of Opinion Spot week continues. And to continue some of the greatest superhero comic cartoons ever, then you should have known. You hear that music, people? Yeah. I'm talking about the one, the only, the amazing Spider-Man cartoon. Yes. 1994. Fox. This cartoon is the second longest running Marvel cartoon. It aired November 19th, 1994 to January 31st, 1998. The show was pretty much a hit right off the bat. The instrumental theme of the series was a hit. You know, once you heard that guitar solo by Joe Perry of Aerosmith coming in, it was like, okay, it was great. The show series tells the story of, yes, Peter Parker, of course, Spider-Man, in his first year at Empire State University. You know, they say he was about 19 in this series. I won't know. I ain't gonna go that far. But it was great. However, having said that, me and my friends talked about this. Yeah, it was great. The show was great. We loved it. But the series came out the wrong year. That was the problem. And let me explain why. The year is 1994. By that time, censorship got really heavy with Fox. It was being enforced by Fox because of, you know, a lot of shows were being banned of excess violence in some countries. So to bid to make Spider-Man more child-friendly or politically correct as possible, the producers had to abide by strict requirements. You know, for example, no mention of death or die or kill. You know, in their word, death was a really strong negative word. So when they talked about Uncle Ben being shot, they never said killed or shot. He would say, Peter would always just say, "Uncle, I let Uncle Ben down." You know, realistic guns were not allowed in the show. That's why, you know, it was more lasers you saw. Spidey was not allowed to hit anyone with his fists. However, there were like a few exceptions. Like, for example, remember the episode of Stinger the Scorpion, when Scorpion was coming at him with his tail? He was punching it defensively, but he could not make contact with somebody's face. You know, Morbius, the vampire, he would drain victims through suctions in his hand, not by biting them. No mention of blood. Blood was out of the question, so they used plasma. You know, Cletus Cassidy, Carnage, was not a serial killer in this. He was just a madman. You know, They actually showed Carnage make blades with the symbiote, but never harm anybody with it. Things like that. Those are some of the restrictions that it didn't hurt the show. It didn't hurt the show at all, but it did for some people that, like I talked to, said that, once again, great show, loved it, probably the greatest Spider-Man cartoon ever, but just the wrong year to come out with all the censorship and restrictions. The whole Rogues Gallery was in this show. Great supporting cast, all the supporting cast from the Spider-Man universe. Robert Robertson, J. Jonah Jameson, Deborah Whitman, Mary Jane, Aunt May, Flash Thompson, Harry Osborn. You name it. You name the villains: Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, Mysterio, Scorpion, Lizard. Rhino, Shocker, Vulture. I can go on and on with the list. There were some villains that weren't in the series due to other commitments. Like, for example, Sandman was not in this series because at that time it was James Cameron was supposed to do Spider-Man, and that's who James Cameron chose as the villain. So he wasn't in it. But great series all around. Had some great storytelling. My friend, one of my buddies, Seth, said it felt more like a superhero drama than a cartoon. Like, there were a lot of issues that Peter was going through, love life, losing this. He also said, and I quote him on this, Uncle Ben played a huge role in this series. Throughout the whole series, he was like the unseen conscience of the series. If something went wrong with Peter would always think about Uncle Ben. And it was great. Guest stars. Included the X-Men, of course. Doctor Strange, Blade, War Machine and Iron Man, the Prowler, Captain America, and the rest of the Forgotten Warriors like the Thunderer and Black Marvel, the Destroyer, the Wizard, Miss America. Excuse me. And of course, my favorite guest star on the series was Daredevil. And of course, Fantastic Four. I'm sorry, forgot about them. But it was a great series. The way they did the symbiote saga, the alien costume saga in the show, to me was pure genius. That was a great way of basically explaining how the symbiote got to Earth without doing the Secret Wars. And the funny thing is, later on in the last season, they did do the Secret Wars. So it was like, but great, excellent series. Peter did monologue to himself a lot, but it was okay. Felicia Hardy in the show was blonde. She did become the Black Cat, but they made it as if she became the Black Cat due to the super soldier serum, where she actually would gain her white hair. She become this like Amazon-like woman, buff, fit. She looked like a fitness model, and that's how she became. Villains I wish had more airtime in this. Green Goblin, Kraven, people like that. I loved how they did Green Goblin this year. How he would go in like to this other state where you would see him talking to the Goblin in the mirror or whatever, and then when the Goblin would come out, he would and he just flips out. I thought that was cool. Hobgoblin was great in this. Mark Hamill did Hobgoblin. It was great, and they used Jason Macendale Hobgoblin instead of Robert Kingsley. It would have been cool if they did use Robert Kingsley and had Jason Macendale be Jack-O-Lantern. I'm just saying. Favorite episodes. There are a lot of favorite episodes. Sting of the Scorpion was good. Framed. A Man Without Fear. Those are the 2 episodes with Daredevil, of course. The pilot episode, Night of the Lizard. Excellent episode. Armed and Dangerous, which was all about Doc Ock. I loved it. There's so many episodes I just can talk about. Anytime there was a guest star, I loved it. When the Punisher guest starred, it was great. And for so many restrictions, they pretty much kept Punisher almost Punisher. So you got to give him credit on that. Excuse me. When Mary Jane, the real Mary Jane, disappeared and the clone came in, I was like, oh, they're doing the clone saga. I was like, oh my God, they're doing the clone saga. And that's one of the sagas I hate. They did it. It was great to see Hydro Man in there too, because this was funny. When Hydro Man first appeared on there, just a week before the show, he appeared on Spider-Man. He appeared on the 90s Fantastic Four cartoon with the Frightful Four. So it was like, wow. You know, it was cool. You know, the Rhino was really funny in that. They used a lot of the classic villains like Hammerhead and Silvermane and people like that. You know, they went all out for this series. I gotta admit, I love the episode where Robbie tells the story of how he knew Tombstone, you know, when they were kids and everything like that. The voiceover acting was great. I think there were some people that got, I know a lot of my buddies said, another thing I had a problem with was that CGI animation they would use a lot, would mix it with the 2D animation, and I know I have a problem with that, and I know another one of my friends here on YouTube, Zip, has a problem with that as well. The series ran, like I said, 65 episodes, ran for 5 seasons. Rumor has there was supposed to be a 6th season actually, where Madam Web and Spidey find the real Mary Jane in, I think, like the 17th century England or so, and in there they're being terrorized by a Jack the Ripper like character who turns out to be Cletus Cassidy. Like I said, they did do the Secret Wars. You know, it was interesting. They did a great job for not explaining things like, for example, how Captain America still be so young without being frozen. He was stuck in a vortex that, you know, no time was... Stuff like that. They did a pretty decent job at explaining. To sum up, was pretty great. You know, it was really great to see a lot of things, you know, especially the Aliens costume saga. You know, they did the costume right. You know, you saw Peter being first loving the costume, thinking it's just a costume, and, you know, it's doing this, and then next you know, the costume starts mimicking him and basically influencing him more to the point where he nearly killed the Rhino and Shocker. And then Venom comes in. And then later on, Venom returns, and then Carnage comes in. You know, things like that. It was really great. I loved the series. Regardless of the restrictions. You know, some might say, oh, the restrictions hurt it because Spidey couldn't do this. He couldn't be the Spider-Man that we all loved from the comics and everything like that. I would partially agree with anybody who thinks that, but regardless of the restrictions, it's still probably one of the best Spider-Man cartoons ever, and I loved it. And I know there are probably people out there that loved it just like me. So, you guys tell me what you think, and thanks again for coming down memory lane with me. This is Mount Vernon Kid, once again saying, y'all take it easy.